U.S. History B, virtual interactive notebook for the 60s. We are almost done. One more unit after this, and then you'll be done for the year. All right. The essential question today: why do people remember JFK so fondly? The main idea is JFK. The subtopics are Mystique, Cuban Missile Crisis, and Dallas. And we have some videos today because JFK, John F. Kennedy, used the media in a way that presidents had not used before. He became really kind of a combination of a president and a movie star. His family became the most glamorous couple in America, and at the same time he was running the country. And they called this time period Camelot. So on your notes, when you set this up, under Mystique, the first thing I want you to write is Camelot, C-A-M-E-L-O-T. And that, of course, refers to King Arthur, the castle that King Arthur built. King Arthur was a glorious figure in British folklore, and he showed up and put everything right and then was killed and everything got bad again. And so JFK's presidency is often called Camelot for that reason. For Mystique, I want you to write down two things, and you're going to draw your information from two videos. The first video is the Mystique video. It's item number 2 under today's lesson. I want you to watch the first about 5-10 minutes of that video and then write down why Kennedy was so popular. He was massively popular. The second thing I want you to do is write Ask Not. Under Mystique, write Ask Not, and then watch the Ask Not video and complete that quote. That is JFK's most famous quote, and it really resonated with people, and it still does to this day. So you're going to write down under Mystique why Kennedy was so popular, how he created Camelot, and also you're going to finish this quote, Ask Not. Under Cuban Missile Crisis. So after JFK was elected, he followed through on a plan that Eisenhower's staff had come up with where Cuba had gone communist under Fidel Castro. There was a communist revolution, and a lot of Cubans didn't want to be communists, and they came across the Caribbean Ocean and went to Miami, and they were accepted as refugees. And to this day, Miami is a huge Cuban sort of exclave. Loads and loads of Cubans who didn't want to be communists and their children live in Miami. So Eisenhower's administration gathered about 3,000 Cubans and trained them. The CIA trained them, and they invaded Cuba to try to take it back from the communists. They landed at a place called Bay of Pigs. Well, Eisenhower wasn't president when this happened. Kennedy was. So Kennedy essentially okayed Eisenhower's plan. And when the invasion went off, the invaders got slaughtered. Castro won. This made Castro paranoid. So, well, not paranoid, scared. I mean, it's only paranoia if it's not happening. The United States made it pretty clear that we wanted Castro out. We actually tried to assassinate Castro several times with an exploding seashell when he was scuba diving. We tried to blow up one of his cigars in his face. The CIA was thinking about spraying a radio station with LSD so that when he gave a speech, he might freak out and scare the Cuban people. I don't know if they actually did that. But that stuff's documented. Anyway, moving on. Castro talked to Nikita Khrushchev, who was the head of the Soviet Union, and asked that he be allowed to install nuclear missiles in Cuba. Khrushchev went ahead and did it. So they snuck in nuclear missiles into Cuba, which is only 90 miles away from the United States. They did it on submarines. Well, spy planes flying over Cuba saw the launch sites, and it was brought to Kennedy's attention that there were nuclear missiles in Cuba. The reason why Khrushchev wanted to do this was we had nuclear missiles in Turkey that were right next to the Russian border, so we could hit them before they could hit us. So he was, in a sense, responding. He wanted a missile threat that could hit us just as quick as we could hit them. Kennedy didn't want the missiles in Cuba. So there was a big hubbub in the White House about what to do. A few pretty aggressive generals wanted to just bomb the crap out of Cuba. Other generals wanted to invade Cuba, but the Navy came to Kennedy and they said, look, we can do a naval blockade. And that's what Kennedy went with. So we ringed Cuba with Navy ships and we stopped Russian ships from entering Cuba. Now, during this time, people thought the world was going to end. People thought that nuclear war was imminent. My parents actually got sent home from school. I think it was 13 days during this crisis. And people really thought, well, that's it. But eventually, Khrushchev backed down. He took the missiles out of Cuba. And the deal was he did that publicly, and then about a year later, we privately took missiles out of Turkey. Now, what do I want you to write down under Cuban Missile Crisis? Well, this is Kennedy's finest hour. The Bay of Pigs was an embarrassment, and people were starting to think of him as a bad president, even though he was a very glamorous figure. But the Cuban Missile Crisis was the greatest thing that Kennedy did. It's what he's remembered for. So for Cuban Missile Crisis, I want you to write down, made the Russians back out of Cuba. All right? Made the Russians back out of Cuba. Kennedy was campaigning for his re-election in Dallas, Texas. And on November 22nd, 1963, he was assassinated by a man named Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, there's all kinds of conspiracies surrounding how this happened. President Trump authorized the release of most of the Kennedy files. There's a lot of shenanigans going on in the Kennedy files. For example, Oswald was a U.S. Marine who defected to Russia, and they kicked him out, but he came back with a wife whose name was Marina, who is still alive, by the way. You can look up Marina. Also, his daughters are still alive. Before he assassinated Kennedy, he went to Mexico City, and we found out, went to the Russian embassy down there. Nobody knows what happened. Another thing that the Kennedy files talks about, and this is real because it's in the Kennedy files, it was released a couple of years ago. The CIA was in touch with mafia members. Before Castro took over Cuba, the CIA had what they called mafia assets in Cuba. So they were to some degree working with a mob. Mobsters have said that they knew about the Oswald. There's a lot of shady stuff happening here. But whatever, Lee Harvey Oswald assassinated John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963. It was a cataclysmic event. It was like the 9/11 of the time. Everybody knows where they were when that happened. My parents remember it absolutely vividly. They were both in school, and it's like they can see it in their minds very clearly. It was a very extreme thing to happen. And that's the end of Camelot. For your output today, I want you to watch an interview with Jackie Kennedy, JFK's wife, and she'll tell you what it was like to be his wife. And it says something about what marriage and relationships and the status of women were at the time. So I'm not endorsing this. This is not saying, oh, hey, this is the way it should be. I'm just saying this is how she viewed her marriage, and I want to know what you think about that in at least 3 sentences on the output. Thank you very much, and I will see you tomorrow for LBJ.